from a professional development.
You look very exciting. I can see it's all dark, but you have these gold rimmed glasses and white teeth.
Yes.
It's like something out of a movie. Well, welcome.
Thank you.
We'll be just a minute, okay?
Okay.
No.
I did have a question.
Sure. What is it?
So for the SIAP, the ones that I'm dropping in the Dropbox,
Yes.
I've also been putting it in the shell, and
Uh-huh.
I've been getting feedback from Dr. Whitaker, but
Yes.
I can't see any feedback from you. Is it supposed to be that way? Is she supposed to be the only one giving us feedback?
There's two shells. One is the internship shell where that
Right.
she sees. One's the course shell where I see.
Right. So I put SIAP task 1 and task 2 there, and so like when I put it in, I go to it, I can see that like it hasn't been graded yet. But when I go to my grades, I can't see that it was submitted. Like I can't even see that I submitted it. But if I click on the assignment itself, I can see that I submitted the assignment.
That's
And
weird.
I know it's weird and it's unusual, and I wanted to let you know that because I didn't want you to think I wasn't putting anything in for SIAP.
Good Canvas, right?
Yes.
Okay, Candace, when we finish, make sure I remember as we finish that I'm going to go check that and get back in touch with you, okay? Because, I looked at all that stuff today, and I don't remember yours coming up as anything really horrible. Let me see. No, my little crummy notes here, I don't have Taylor down for anything bad, so that's a good thing.
Okay.
I know, I did. You haven't done, according to mine, I haven't seen SIAP 3 or 4.
Yeah, so I'll be submitting SIAP 3 tonight.
Okay, but everything else is there.
Okay. I just don't see it like in the grade. I don't see any comments. I don't see any.
Yeah, I made comments on all of them. So we're missing something somewhere. In fact, I never have a discussion board or a evidence that doesn't get a comment ever.
And I know. So I'm like, I don't know what's going on. I don't know if I'm not getting something or you're not getting something. So
Okay,
maybe I'll go back and try to look again and see what's going on. Because I know you make comments, so I try to look for comments. I didn't
sure.
see comments. So I'm like, this is weird. But I can try to go back and look again when I get home.
Okay, yeah, we'll do that after class. I'll take a look and see what's there. Yeah,
Okay.
you have the two shells just going through the background of your question. Dr. Whitaker's role with you guys is to really guide you through those final little pieces that go into your evidence in a task string. Whereas my role is with the evidences is to make sure you get them done as part of class and that there's a participation grade included, but not necessarily a how good was it grade. And what I usually do is try to give a grade to lead you to think, well, I need to add this or I need to add that based on his on my comments. She's the one that'll tell you officially it's ready to go to a task string because she's the one that will get all that back. All I'll do is tell you, well, you're missing this section, you're missing that section for the course. Okay?
Okay.
Yeah, in fact, thanks for bringing that up because that was part of one of my things I needed to discuss today. So we're going to start with that section. I also see you have an I voted sticker. Very good.
Yes.
I got out today and voted myself. Who else we got up there? Pamela, did you get voted today?
Yes, sir, I did.
Okay, very good. Did you know that teachers are one of the poor, if not the poorest profession in percentage of people who vote? Is that not unbelievable?
wow.
That just wipes me out every time I think about it, because your entire career is based on what happens locally. It doesn't really matter who's the president or who your senators are at
Right.
the state level. It's who's dealing with your county commission, with your city council. Those are the folks who run your lives. So gotta vote. It's really embarrassing that teachers are so bad about it. Let me see my dates here. Reminder that November 19th is the drop dead date for anyone turning in evidences so that they can get in the task room in time to get out. Dr. Lamb's got to turn in his list at 9 a.m. November 19th. Once it's in, it's done. I'll just explain or just talk to candidates about the difference between the Blackboard drop boxes. I give grades, and those grades go towards your course grade. It's for evidences, it's some variation of 70 to, well, sometimes 50 if people really don't do much. 50 to 100. It's not going to affect your final grade particularly, but it's supposed to jibe you in the right direction. So I hope that works. But you really should drop all your work into Dr. Whitaker's box as well, so she's the one that has to go through the whole task training rigmarole with you. I don't do that part. I do that with my interns who are all in 604. And a reminder that I'll be out beginning November 19th, probably away from the computer for 2 or 3 weeks due to a little hospital visit I'm going to be making. So Dr. Lamb said he would pick up shells and grades and all those sorts of things for me. I appreciate that. And Dr. Whitaker will be meeting at least 2 of your class meetings, probably 2 out of the last 3. So thank you for your kind thoughts on that. And tonight we have a video that I wish I had seen before I became a school administrator. Last week we had the why, the simple question, why is your product better? Why are you the right person to be the principal? Why are you leading this school? Tonight's is a little more nuanced, a little more complicated, but funnily enough, it hones in on Steve Jobs and Martin Luther King again, like the last time, but with kind of a different, not a different conclusion, but an interesting conclusion. So while you're watching, think of what you're about that makes you worth telling this story. Okay, because you'll need to tell it. Thanks so much. Can you all see?
It's really, really great to be here. You have the power to change the world. I'm not saying that to be cliche. You really have the power to change the world.
Okay.
Deep inside of you, every single one of you.
Something went wrong on my share screen. Can you see it now?
No.
How about now?
Still you.
I'm sure that's a stunning sight, but that's not really what I wanted. Okay, let me see if I can get this fixed. I want to share. I'll share the computer sound. Aha. What? Okay, sorry about the sorry about that. Okay, can you see now?
There she is.
There she is. There's Nancy Duarte. I'm going to make her bigger so you can actually see her better. How's that? Everybody sees her better?
It has the most
Can you hear?
Device known to man.
Yes.
Not an idea.
Good.
So a single idea from the human mind, it can start a groundswell. It could be a flashpoint for movement, and it can actually rewrite our future. But an idea is powerless if it stays inside of you. If you never pull that idea out for others to contend with, it will die with you. Now, maybe some of you guys have tried to convey your idea, and it wasn't adopted, it was rejected, and some other mediocre or average idea was adopted. And the only difference between those two is in the way it was communicated. Because if you communicate an idea in a way that resonates, change will happen, and you can change the world. So my family, we collect these vintage European posters. Every time we go to Maui, we go to the dealer there, and he turns these great big posters. I love them. They all have one idea and one really clear visual that conveys the idea. They're about the size of a mattress. They're really big. They're not as thick as a mattress, but they're big. And the guy will tell the story as he turns the pages. And this one time I was flanked by my two kids, and he turns the page and this poster's underneath. And right when I lean forward and say, "Oh my God, I love this poster," both my kids jump back and they're like, "Oh my God, Mom, it's you." And there's a poster. Yeah, like fired up. The thing I loved about this poster was the irony. Here's this chick all fired up, headed into battle as the standard there, and she's holding these little suavitos baking spices. Like something so seemingly insignificant, though she's willing to risk, life and limb to promote this thing. So if you're to swap out those little suavitos baking spices with a presentation, yeah, it's me, pretty fired up. I was fired up about presentations back when it wasn't cool to be fired up about presentations. I really think they have the power to change the world when you communicate effectively through them. And changing the world is hard. It won't happen with just one person with one single idea. That idea has got to spread or it won't be effective. So it has to come out of you and out into the open for people to see. And the way that ideas are conveyed the most effectively is through story. For thousands of years, illiterate generations would pass on their values and their culture from generation to generation, and they would stay intact. So there's something kind of magical about a story structure that makes it so that when it's assembled, it can be ingested and then recalled by the person who's receiving it. So basically, a story, you get a physical reaction. Your heart can race, your eyes can dilate. You could talk about, "Oh, I got a chill down my spine," or "I could feel it in the pit of my stomach." We actually physically react when someone's telling us a story. So even though the stage is the same, a story can be told, but once a presentation's told, it completely flatlines. And I wanted to figure out why. Why is it that we physically sit with rapt attention during a story, but it just dies for a presentation? So I wanted to figure out, how do you incorporate story into presentation? So we've had thousands of presentations back at the shop, hundreds of thousands of presentations actually. So I knew the context of a really bad presentation. I decided to study cinema and literature and really dig in and figure out what was going on and why it was broken. So I want to show you some of the findings that led up to what I think I've uncovered as a presentation form. So it was obvious to start with Aristotle. He had a 3-act structure, a beginning, a middle, and an end. We studied poetics and rhetoric. And a lot of presentations don't even have that in its most simple form. And then when I moved on to studying hero archetypes, I thought, oh, okay, the presenter's the hero, they're up on stage, they're the star of the show. And it's really easy to feel that way as the presenter, that you're the star of the show. I realized right away that that's really broken, because I have an idea, I can put it out there, but if you guys don't grab that idea and hold it as dear, that idea goes nowhere and the world has never changed. So in reality, the presenter isn't the hero, the audience is the hero of our idea. So if you look at Joseph Campbell's hero's journey, just at the front part, there was some really interesting insights there. So there's this likable hero in an ordinary world, and they get this call to adventure. So the world is kind of brought out of balance. And at first they're resistant. They're like, I don't know if I want to jump into this. And then a mentor comes along and helps them move from their ordinary world into a special world. And that's the role of the presenter, is to be the mentor. You're not Luke Skywalker, you're Yoda. You're the one that actually helps the audience move from one thing and into your new special idea. And that's the power of story. So in its most simple structure, it's a 3-part structure of a story. You have a likable hero who has a desire, and they encounter a roadblock, and ultimately they emerge transformed. And that's the basic structure. But it wasn't until I came across Gustav Freytag's pyramid. He drew this shape in 1863. Now, he was a German dramatist. If I click, he's a German dramatist, and he believed there was a 5-act structure, which has...
We used to actually teach this in 8th grade in Charlotte, and it was a little bit over their heads, we found, so we had to back off on this.
The exposition, a rising action, a climax, a falling action, and a denouement, which is the unraveling or the resolution of the story. Well, I love the shape. So we talk about shape. Story has an arc. Well, an arc is a shape. We talk about classical music having a shapeliness to it. So I thought, hey, if presentations had a shape, what would that shape be? And how do the greatest communicators use that shape, or do they use a shape? So I'll never forget, it was a Saturday morning. After all this study, it was a couple years of study, I drew a shape. And I was like, oh my gosh, if this shape is real, I should be able to take two completely different presentations and overlay it, and it should be true. So I took the obvious. I took Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech, and I took Steve Jobs' 2007 iPhone launch speech. I overlaid it over it, and it worked. I sat in my office just astounded. I actually cried a little because it was like, I've been given this gift, and here it is. This is the shape of a great presentation. Isn't it amazing? Crying. So I want to walk you through it because it's actually pretty astounding. There is a beginning, a middle, and an end, and I want to walk you through it because the greatest communicators of all time, I went through speeches, everything. Actually, I can overlay the shape. Even the Gettysburg Address follows the shape. So at the beginning of any presentation, you need to establish what is. You know, here's the status quo, here's what's going on. And then you need to compare that to what could be. Now you need to make that gap as big as possible because there's the commonplace of the status quo, and you need to contrast that with the loftiness of your idea. So it's like, you know, here's the past, here's the present, but look at our future. Here's a problem, but look at that problem removed. Here's a roadblock. Let's annihilate the roadblock. You need to really amplify that gap. This would be like the inciting incident in a movie. It's when suddenly the audience has to contend with what you just put out there. You have to say, wow, do I want to agree with this and align with it or not? And then the rest of your presentation should support that. So the middle goes back and forth. It traverses between what is and what could be, what is and what could be. Because what you're trying to do is make the status quo and the normal unappealing. And you're wanting to draw them towards what could be in the future with your idea adopted. Now, on your way to change the world, people are going to resist. They're not going to be excited. They may love the world the way it is. So you'll encounter resistance. That's why you have to move back and forth. It's similar to sailing. When you're sailing against the wind and there is wind resistance, you have to move your boat back and forth and back and forth. That's so you can capture the wind. You have to actually capture the resistance coming against you when you're sailing. Now, interesting, if you capture the wind just right and you set your sail just right, your ship will actually sail faster than the wind itself. It's a physics phenomenon. So by planting in there the way they're going to resist between what is and what can be, it's actually going to draw them towards your idea quicker than should you not do that. So after you've moved back and forth between what is and what could be, the last turning point is a call to action, which every presentation should have. But at the very end, you need to describe the world as a new bliss. This is utopia with my idea adopted. This is the way the world is going to look when we join together and we solve this big problem. So you need to use that as your ending in a very poetic and a dramatic way. So, interestingly, when I was done, I was like, you know what? I could use this as an analysis tool. I actually transcribed speeches, and I would actually map out how much they mapped this tool. So I want to show you some of that today, and I want to start with the very two people that I used when I first did. Here's Mr. Jobs. Completely has changed the world of personal computing. He's changed the music industry. Now he's on his way to change the mobile device industry. So he's definitely changed the world. And this is the shape of his iPhone launch, 2007, when he launched his iPhone. It's a 90-minute talk. You can see he starts with what is, traverses back and forth, and ends with what could be. So I want to zoom in on this. The white line is him speaking. He's talking. The next color line you'll see popped up there, that's when he cuts to video. So he's adding some variety, and he cuts to demo. So it's not just him talking the whole time. And these lines are representative there. And then towards the end, you'll see a blue line, which will be the guest speaker. So this is where it gets kind of interesting. Every tick mark here is when he made them laugh. And every tick mark here is when he made them clap. They are so involved physically. They are physically reacting to what he is saying, which is actually fantastic, because then you know you have the audience like in your hand. So he kicks off what could be. With this is a day I have been looking forward to for 2.5 years. So he's launching a product that he's known about already for a couple years. So this is not a new product to him. But look at this. He does this other thing. He marvels. He marvels at his own product. He marvels himself more than the audience laughs or claps. So he's like, isn't it awesome? Isn't this beautiful? And he's modeling for the audience what he wants them to feel. So he is actually doing a job of compelling them to feel a certain way. So he kicks off with what could be, with every once in a while, a revolutionary product comes along that changes everything. So he starts to kick in and talk about his new product. Now at the beginning of it, he actually keeps the phone off. You'll see that the line is pretty white up until this point. So he goes off between, here's this new phone, and here's the sucky competitors, and here's this new phone, and here's the sucky competitors. And then, right about here, he has a star moment, and that's something we'll always remember. What he does, he turns the phone on. The audience sees scrolling for the first time. You can hear the oxygen suck down the room. They gasp. You can actually hear it. So he creates a moment that they'll always remember. So if we move along this model, you can see the blue where the external speakers are going, and then over towards the bottom right, the line break. That's because his clicker broke. So what does he do? He wants to keep this heightened sense of excitement. He tells a personal story right there where the technology didn't work. So here's a master communicator, and he turns to story to keep the audience involved. So the top right, he ends with the new bliss. He leaves them with a promise that Apple will continue to build revolutionary new products. And he says, there's an old Wayne Gretzky quote that I love. I skate to where the puck is going to be, not to where it's been. We've always tried to do that at Apple, and from the very, very beginning, we always will. So he ends with the new bliss. So let's look at Mr. King. He was an amazing visionary. He's a clergyman who spent his life working hard for equality. And this is the shape of the I Have a Dream speech. You can see he starts with what is, moves back and forth between what is and what could be, and ends with a very poetic new bliss, which is the famous part that we all know. So I'm going to spread it out a little bit here, stretch it for you. And what I'm doing here is I've put the actual transcript there along with the text. I know you can't read it, but at the end of every line break, I broke the line there because he took a breath and he paused. Now he was a Southern Baptist preacher. Most people hadn't heard that, so he had a real cadence and a rhythm that was really new for the people there. So I want to cover up these lines of text with a bar because I want to use this bar as an information device here. So let's talk through how he actually spoke to the people. The blue bars here are going to be when he used the actual rhetorical device of repetition. So he was repeating himself. He was using the same words and phrases so people could remember and recall them. Well, then he also used a lot of metaphors and visual words. This was a way to take really complicated ideas and make them memorable and knowledgeable so people got it. He actually created very, almost like scenes with his words to make it so they could envision what he was saying. And then there was also a lot of familiar songs and scriptures that he used. This is just the front end of it that you're seeing. And then he also made a lot of political references to the promises that were made to the people. So if we look at the very first end of what is, at the very end of what is was the very first time that people actually clapped and roared really loud. So at the end of what is, what he did is he said, America has given the Negro people a bad check, a check which has come back marking insufficient funds. Well, everyone knows what it's like to not have money in your account. So he used a metaphor people were very familiar with. But when they really charged up, the very first time they really, really screamed, was so we have come to cash this check, a check that will give us upon demand the riches of freedom and the security of justice. And that's when they really clapped. It was when he compared what currently is to what could be. So when we move along a little farther in the model, you'll see it goes back and forth at a more frenzied pace. And this is when he goes back and forth and back and forth. Now, the audience was in a frenzy. You know, they were all excited. And so you can actually do this to keep them in a heightened sense of excitement. So he says, I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. So you can see he used little orange text there to remind him of the promise that the politicians had made to him or that this country had made. Then he moves back and forth between I have a dream that one day, I have a dream that one day, I have a dream that one day. And then at the end, it gets really interesting here because he uses, you can look at the 4 shades of green. There's a lot of blue there, which was a lot of repetition. He had a heightened sense of repetition. And the green was a heightened sense of songs and scriptures. So the first batch of green was the actual scripture from the book of Isaiah. The second batch of green was My Country, 'Tis of Thee. Now that's a familiar song that was specifically very significant for the Black people at the time because this song was the song they chose to change the words to as an outcry, saying the promises had not been kept. So the third batch of green was actually a stanza from My Country, 'Tis of Thee. And then the fourth was a Negro spiritual, free at last, thank God Almighty, I'm free at last. So what he did is he actually reached inside of the hearts of the audience. He pulled from scripture, which was important. He pulled from songs that they'd sung together as an outcry against this outrage, and he used those as a device to connect and resonate with the audience. Ending, painting a picture of this new bliss using the very things inside of them that they already held as sacred. So he's a great man. He had a big, big dream. There's a lot of people here, you guys have really big dreams. You have really big ideas inside of you that you need to get out. But you know what, we encounter hardships. It's not easy to change the world, it's a big job. You know, his house was bombed, he was stabbed with a letter opener, ultimately lost his life, you know, for what he cared about. But you know, a lot of us aren't going to be required to paint that kind of sacrifice. But what happens is it basically is a little bit like that basic story structure. Life can be like that, where, you know, you guys are all likable people, you have a desire, you encounter roadblocks, and we stop there. We're just like, you know, I had this idea, but I'm not going to put it out there. It's been rejected. You know, we self-sabotage our own ideas, and we just butt up against the roadblocks instead of choosing to let the struggle transform us and choosing to go ahead and have a dream and make it real. And you know, if anyone, if I can do this, anybody can do this. I was raised in an economically and emotionally starved environment. First time I got to go to camp with my sister, I was abused. It wasn't the first time I was abused though, it was like just the most aggressive. And my mom and dad, they married each other 3 times. Yeah, that was tumultuous. And when they weren't fighting, they were helping sober up some alcoholic that was living with us because they were both sober alcoholics. So my mom abandoned us when I was 16 years old, and I took on the role of caretaker in my home with my siblings. And I met a man, fell in love. I went to a year of college. I did what every single bright young girl should do. I got married when I was 18 years old. And you know what? I knew that I was born for more than this. Right at that point in the story of my life, I had a choice. I could let all these things push me down, and I could let all my ideas die inside of me. I could just say, you know, life is too hard to change the world. It's just too tough. But I chose a different story for my life. Don't you know it? And so I feel like there's people in this room that you got those little suavitos baking spices, and you're just like, you know, it's really not that big a deal. It's really not the whole world I can change. But you know, you can change your world. You can change your life. You can change the world that you have control on. You can change your sphere. I want to encourage you to do that. Because you know what? The future isn't a place that we're going to go. It's a place that you get to create. I want to thank you. Bless you. God bless you.
Okay, you know it's coming. What's your idea? Who wants to give me a shot at it? What's your idea? And please don't tell me it's to raise reading scores by 3%. Whoop, it's still talking. Shh. Okay. What's your idea? I'm not going to let you go without it. There's only 4 of us. I'm going to tell you mine. My idea is that teachers are called to being teachers, much like ministers are called to be ministers. And especially teachers in schools where times are tough and the kids have a tough time. And I think that's something that can be appealed to. I think it's very, very real, and it's a whole lot bigger task than raising reading scores 3 points and math scores 4 points, which is boring and dull, but hopefully will occur on the side while you're pursuing these great goals of a community of learners and a safe place where kids can go and think and talk and be and share. So that's mine. Next.
I kind of agree with that teachers are, you know, if you are in the field of education, you're kind of called to do that. That's like, you know, your purpose. And it may not, like I've always told people, I don't really love teaching. I love like the relationship building that is that comes, you know, naturally in education, like the mentorship piece. Like that's what I really like, building relationships with students and families and, you know, other professionals and just kind of, being or kind of opening students' eyes. Like I like to see them learn about what I teach, but I like even more to see them to grow, like personally, and when I'm talking to them about life and that kind of stuff.
And as a principal, you get a chance to actually try to arrange
Hmm.
that's a real possibility, that's a real reality.
And I think that's what, and I talk to my mom about that all the time. I think that's what I'm really supposed to be doing. Like teaching was just like the segue.
Right.
And like I said, I've never really loved teaching. I feel like I'm really good at it, but it's not my passion. Like my passion is to help like those families and, to reach the people outside of the school that are connected to the people inside the school. Like that's what I really want to do, and create programs and, help people to, connect them to resources, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and schools are perfectly situated to do all those things,
Mm-hmm.
if we allow it to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you and I are on the same rowboat here, that's for sure. Although I've gotten off the boat because I don't row anymore. I do hope to leave the same idea with folks in this program as I go through. Okay, that leaves Candace and Pamela. What's your idea? Pamela, I'm going to just call on you. What's your idea?
I don't have a new idea.
Come up
There's
with an idea.
there's an idea that's resonated that I've heard in the last few months, and it very much agrees with the way that I feel about education. Um, I have my instructional technology master's degree,
Uh-huh.
and I'm really interested in technology and education. But I learned about the TPAC structure, and that just really interests me.
Okay.
The interaction between pedagogy and content and technology, and teachers being in control of that and making those decisions and realizing that those are the three pieces that they can put together. And at times, the focus may be on that pedagogy. At times, it may be on, that technology. At times, they may use other structures.
Okay,
But
so you're fascinated by the structures behind it and putting together it's like putting together a bridge. You need to know the pieces and how they go together
that's
to create
right.
places where kids can learn. Okay. Value and worth. Thank you. Candace, that leaves you. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, can y'all hear me? I've been switching from like computer to phone. Something is going on with the computer, and I try to talk like twice. I don't think I will. So I'm on like my phone and my computer because the computer that I'm borrowing it's not allowing the camera or the microphone to work. But my big idea is I'm super passionate about minority boys. Um and that's something that I love teaching males. My relationship with them, my bond with them is strong because I feel like boys are so misunderstood. So I've always had this heartfelt, I don't know, outreach to boys, especially minority boys, because they're misunderstood. But I always want to like find programs or find ways or like professional development, like ways to close achievement gaps, ways to teach minority boys, and just kind of like help them be a little bit understood in the classroom.
Well,
That's
I have a former assistant principal who is principal of the school now, who started and actually got a doctorate from Gardner Webb, and her PhD was on setting up single gender classrooms and the law behind it and the good behind it. and identifying the teachers will be the best girl teachers and the best guy teachers and the best mixed teachers, and setting the whole thing up that way. So if you really get crazy about it, let me know and I'll get you in touch with Janet, because she knows that stuff backwards and forwards. And we used it the last year that we were there together for her sixth grade team, and we're very impressed by the results. And we were also surprised at who was identified as the boys' teachers and the girls' teachers and the mixed teachers, because it didn't. Sometimes people were wrong about themselves, and she had some identifier assessment tool to put you through, so that you identify which group you would be best with.
Yeah, I would love to read like her research or dissertation or whatever she may have written. I would
I'll
love
tell you what I'll do. I've got to write you an email later.
Okay.
I'll put her name and district email address in for you. Okay.
Okay, that'll be great.
Okay. Well, I'm glad to hear everybody's got a great idea. And it's important that you keep that and that you hold on to it and that you sell it. And that's that's the important part of leadership to me, is to be able to take a vision and turn it into reality. All the other things are just little bits and pieces. I hope you have a very good week. Any questions before I let you go? Okay. Then have a wonderful week, and I'll see you next Tuesday night, 12th of November. And we'll talk about communicating face-to-face with just one person at a time, rather than these banned speeches, but also ways that may help you in your interactions with others to pull them in. Okay?
Sounds
Guys,
good.
have a good one.
You too.
Thank you. Well, didn't mean to do that. Sorry.